Welcome to Hockey Wiz Talks podcast. In this podcast, I'll be previewing the free agency period in the NHL. In this podcast, I will be previewing the upcoming free agency and making predictions on where free agents might land when they are eligible to sign with new teams. But before I preview free agency, I'd like to update you on a few major trades that have occurred and some major extensions as well. Some major trades that occurred during the offseason thus far include Tampa Bay Lightning acquiring defenseman Ryan McDonagh and a 4th round pick in the 2024 draft from the Nashville Predators for a 7th round pick in the 2024 draft and a 2nd round pick in the 2025 draft. The New Jersey Devils acquiring Jacob Markstrom from the Calgary Flames for defenseman Kevin Ball and a 1st round pick in 2025. The Washington Capitals acquiring forward Pierre-Luc Dubois from the Los Angeles Kings for goaltender Darcy Kemper. The Senators acquiring goaltender Linus Ullmark from the Boston Bruins for goaltender Jonas Korpisalo, forward Mark Kastelik, and a 1st round pick in the 2024 draft. The San Jose Sharks acquiring defenseman Jake Wallman and a 2nd round pick in the 2024 draft from the Detroit Red Wings for future considerations. The Chicago Blackhawks acquiring forwards Ilya Mikheyev, Sam Lafferty, and a 4th round pick in the 2027 NHL draft from the Vancouver Canucks for a 2nd round pick in the 2027 NHL draft. The San Jose Sharks acquire forward Carl Grundstrom from the Los Angeles Kings for defenseman Kyle Burroughs. Buffalo Sabres acquire forward Beck Malenstein from the Washington Capitals for a 2nd round pick in the 2024 draft. Utah Hockey Club acquires defenseman Mikhail Sergachev from the Tampa Bay Lightning for defenseman J.J. Moser, forward Connor Geekie, and a 7th round pick in the 2024 NHL draft and the 2nd round pick in the 2025 NHL draft. Utah Hockey Club also acquires defenseman John Marino and a 5th round pick in the 2024 NHL draft from the New Jersey Devils for a 2nd round pick in the 2024 NHL draft and a 2nd round pick in the 2025 NHL draft. The Los Angeles Kings acquire forward Tanner Jeannot from the Tampa Bay Lightning for a 4th round pick in the 2024 NHL draft and a 2nd round pick in the 2025 NHL draft. Pittsburgh Penguins acquire Kevin Hayes and a 2nd round pick in the 2025 NHL draft from the St. Louis Blues for future considerations. Washington Capitals acquire goalie Logan Thompson from the Vegas Golden Knights for a 3rd round pick in the 2024 NHL draft and a 3rd round pick in the 2025 NHL draft. Some major extensions that occurred include UC Soros being extended by Nashville for 8 years at 7.74 AAV. Casey Middlestat was re-signed by the Colorado Avalanche for 3 years at 5.75 mil per. Dylan DeMello being extended by Winnipeg for 4 years at 4.9 AAV. Dakota Joshua extended by Vancouver for 4 years at 3.25 AAV. Tyler Myers extended by Vancouver for 3 years at 3 mil per, and Teddy Bluger extended by Vancouver for 2 years at 1.8 mil per. These are the top center free agents in 2024. Steven Stamkos. Steven Stamkos is already well known and well established in his NHL career. He's coming off a really good season where he had 40 plus goals, and he's still a established goal and is a 2-time Stanley Cup champion with the Tampa Bay Lightning. He will be looking for a good payday after taking a significant pay cut last time around. I predict that Stamkos will be signed by the Detroit Red Wings for 4 years at $8.5 million per. Elias Lindholm is another top UFA center since the crop of UFA centers is not really that good this year. Lindholm is coming off a season where he didn't really perform that well, as he split time between the Calgary Flames and Vancouver Canucks. But in the playoffs with the Vancouver Canucks, he proved that he can play many roles. He should still be very valuable on the open market and should draw plenty of interest from teams. I predict Elias Lindholm signs with the Boston Bruins for 7 years at $7.5 million per season. Matt Duchene. Last year, Matt Duchene signed with the Dallas Stars for 1 year, $3 million, with the anticipated departure of Joe Pavelski and several other key players. Expect Dallas to bring back Matt Duchene with a significant pay raise on a short-term deal. I predict Matt Duchene re-signs with the Dallas Stars at 3 years for $5.5 million per. Sean Monahan had an excellent season split between the Montreal Canadiens and Winnipeg Jets, and still has plenty of gas left in the tank. There is still question marks about his health, as this was the first time in many years he played in 80 games. When healthy, Sean Monahan is a very capable number 2 center in the league, and he could fit on many good contending teams. I predict Sean Monahan signs with the Pittsburgh Penguins for 1 year at $3 million. Adam Henrique. After being traded from the Anaheim Ducks to the Edmonton Oilers, Adam Henrique really found his home on the third line alongside Connor Brown and Matthias Janmark, and was excellent on that historic PK unit in the playoffs. I imagine the Edmonton Oilers would love to bring him back. I predict the Edmonton Oilers re-sign Adam Henrique for 3 years at $3.5 million per. Chandler Stevenson. With the Vegas Golden Knights running low on cap space, it seems unlikely that he will return to Vegas. And so it seems likely that he will hit the market and play for a different team next season. Chandler Stevenson is a Swiss Army knife on offense and has experience playing all 3 forward positions and has experience playing on the power play and penalty kill. I predict Chandler Stevenson signs with the Buffalo Sabres for 5 years at $5.6 million per. Max Domi. There's many speculations floating around that Max Domi will not re-sign with the Toronto Maple Leafs. And if that is the case, Domi should be a free agent and he should want to sign for a contending team. A contending team that maybe is a little cap strapped and can't go for the top tier free agents, but is looking for that mid-tier free agent that has top 6 potential. And that's where Max Domi fits. I predict Max Domi signs with the Vegas Golden Knights for 2 years at $4 million per. Alexander Wennberg. Alexander Wennberg was on track to get a very nice payday in free agency when he was still with Seattle. But after a disastrous tenure with the New York Rangers, his value has taken a bit of a hit. But nonetheless, he still has value as a third line center and penalty killer and is a face-off specialist. I predict a team like the Florida Panthers would sign him to a 3-year deal at $3 million per. Kevin Stenlund. Kevin Stenlund really found a home in Florida last year as the 4th line center and penalty killer, and I would imagine that he stays in Florida for 3 years at $1.5 million per. Zemgus Girgensons. Zemgus Girgensons isn't likely to return to the Buffalo Sabres, making him a UFA. The Minnesota Wild are in need of a 4th line center, and Zemgus Girgensons fits the bill. Tyson Jost. With the departure of many of the 4th line players, the Dallas Stars need to fill in some of their depth, and that's where Tyson Jost comes in. Tyson Jost could fit perfectly as their 4th line center or on the wing, and he could grow in that Dallas Stars system, just like Sam Steele did last year. Thomas Nosek. With the departure of many key role players and key players, Vegas Golden Knights need to replace a lot of their key players. Nikolai Watt is projected to play as their 2nd line center as they just lost Chandler Stevenson, and that leaves a hole at their 4th line center position. And that's where a player such as Thomas Nosek would come in. Thomas Nosek is no stranger to playing on the Vegas Golden Knights and actually had a good amount of success there. A return to Vegas could be just what the doctor ordered for Nosek. Travis Boyd. Travis Boyd was the odd man out on the Arizona Coyotes last year, so I don't expect him to be brought back. That makes him a UFA, and he could be a valued role player and 4th liner on another team, such as the St. Louis Blues, who need some 4th line depth. And now a word from our sponsor. Check out my scouting blog at hockeywiz777scouting.com. Listen to my scouting blog podcast on podcasters.spotify.com/pod/show/hockeywiz777 scouting. Here are the top left wing free agents in 2024. Jake Guentzel. Jake Guentzel is one of the most sought after free agents this year, as he is one of the more proven players in this free agency period and has proven that he can play alongside star players. The Carolina Hurricanes will certainly make a giant push, but ultimately I predict that Jake Guentzel signs with the Vancouver Canucks for 7 years at $9 million per season. Teuvo Teravainen. Teuvo Teravainen is one of the more underrated players in the NHL. He is hardly mentioned when you talk about the Hurricanes' core players, and that's why he is not returning to Carolina. With Teravainen on the team, you can expect a solid 50 to 60 point season with a high amount of assists, and is a solid complementary player alongside other stars. This is why he would be the perfect fit in Chicago alongside a player like Connor Bedard. I predict Teuvo Teravainen signs with the Chicago Blackhawks at 6 years for $6 million per. Jake DeBrusk. Jake DeBrusk is the perfect complement alongside star players as he's willing to do the dirty work, and he seems like a good playoff performer who can elevate his performance in the playoffs. This is why he is a good fit on a team like the Edmonton Oilers, who is looking for players to play alongside Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl. I predict Jake DeBrusk signs with the Edmonton Oilers for 5 years at $5 million per. Tyler Bertuzzi. Tyler Bertuzzi is another Leaf UFA that is set to hit the market. Bertuzzi played well for the Toronto Maple Leafs last year, but it seems like they are going in a different direction. Tyler Bertuzzi would be a great replacement on the Carolina Hurricanes if Jake Guentzel does leave. Although he is no Jake Guentzel, he will produce and does have history playing alongside stars. I predict Tyler Bertuzzi signs with the Carolina Hurricanes for 4 years at $4 million per. Jonathan Drouin, while technically is a free agent, but inevitably I think he will sign with the Colorado Avalanche for 3 years at $4.5 million per. He had one of his best seasons in the NHL playing alongside Nathan MacKinnon, so I don't anticipate him leaving anytime soon. Warren Foegele. After a strong season with the Edmonton Oilers and a stellar postseason run, Warren Foegele is set to have a huge payday in free agency. And I can picture a bad team trying to make a playoff push, giving him a massive payday. A team like the Columbus Blue Jackets could use a veteran like Warren Foegele and sign him to a 3-year deal at $3.5 million per. Yakov Trenin. Yakov Trenin is a versatile winger that has experience playing center, and he is a big player, which is music to GM's ears and coaches' ears as well. You would imagine many teams will be after him, and ultimately, I predict the New Jersey Devils will sign Yakov Trenin to a 4-year deal at $3.4 million per. David Perron is still a valuable veteran scorer in the league and could really help mentor some young players on young teams. This is why he would be a great fit on Toronto, as they have a relatively young core. I predict David Perron gets signed by the Toronto Maple Leafs for 2 years at $3.25 million per. Mike Hoffman. Mike Hoffman is a tricky situation because he has a reputation as a locker room cancer, and so he's not going to be welcome in many NHL locker rooms. But it seems like he's fine in San Jose, which is why I think he stays with the San Jose Sharks for 2 years at $3 million per. Anthony Beauvillier. Anthony Beauvillier bounced around the league on 3 different teams last year before landing in Nashville. Anthony Beauvillier bounced around the league and played for 3 different teams last year, but I think he really did find a home in Nashville towards the end of last year, which is why I predict he re-signs with the Nashville Predators for 3 years at $2.8 million per. Jordan Martinook. Jordan Martinook was an outstanding checking line winger in Carolina playing alongside Jordan Staal. And he could serve as an excellent checking line winger on another team, such as the Los Angeles Kings, who, similar to Carolina, emphasizes having a stable shutdown line. Jason Zucker. Jason Zucker had a down year playing for the Arizona Coyotes last year, and I expect him to sign a short-term deal in free agency with a good team to try to boost his value. Signing with a team like the Colorado Avalanche for 1 year would be the smart move to do. Jacob Vrana. Many people forget about a player like Jacob Vrana, who is a highly talented player, but for some reason he got lost in the shuffle in St. Louis. I predict he signs with a team like San Jose, who doesn't have as much talent. Dominic Kubalik. Dominic Kubalik struggled with the Ottawa Senators last year, and so I don't think he will stay in Ottawa. But a return to Chicago, where he did have some success, seems imminent. Danton Heinen. Danton Heinen is a tricky one because on one hand, he did have a really good year with Boston last year. But on the second hand, we have seen him play on some other teams and he didn't have remotely the same success. It makes you think that he is a system player and is the product of Boston's team success. Which is why I have him re-signing with Boston for 3 years at $2.75 million per. Matthias Janmark. Matthias Janmark really made his mark as a penalty killer and playoff specialist with the Edmonton Oilers this past postseason run. I predict Matthias Janmark stays with the Edmonton Oilers as he seems comfortable playing there. William Carrier. William Carrier was one of the original draft picks by Vegas in the expansion draft, but it seems like he's going to leave in free agency as there are teams that need a player that is dependable and will stay in the lineup, and that is Will Carrier. William Carrier signs with the Ottawa Senators for 3 years at $1.75 million per. Ryan Lomberg just won a Stanley Cup with the Florida Panthers, thus raising his value to other teams who may be looking for a veteran who has some Stanley Cup experience. Expect a team like the Anaheim Ducks, who have a very young team but do love those big bodies, to scoop up a player like Ryan Lomberg for a 3-year deal at $1.5 million per. Some other left wingers include JVR, who I predict will go to the New Jersey Devils, Max Pacioretty, who I think signs with the Florida Panthers, Matt Martin, who I think will sign with Tampa Bay, Patrick Maroon, who re-signs with the Boston Bruins, and Nick Cousins, who signs with the New York Rangers. Here are the top right-wing free agents in 2024. Sam Reinhart. Sam Reinhart had a career-high 57 goals with the Florida Panthers, and that is why I don't think he signs with another team, because there is no guarantee that he is going to duplicate the same success with a different franchise. I think Sam Reinhart re-signs with the Florida Panthers for 8 years at $9 million per. Jonathan Marchessault. Jonathan Marchessault was one of the original expansion draft picks by the Vegas Golden Knights. But with the Golden Knights low on cap space, it doesn't seem like they will be able to re-sign him, as he will demand way too much money. With a Conn Smythe under his belt, there will be many teams clamoring for Jonathan Marchessault, as they feel like he could be that last piece that puts them over the hump. I predict a team like the Montreal Canadiens could sign Marchessault to a 6-year deal at $6.8 million per. Tyler Toffoli. Tyler Toffoli had an outstanding season last year, split between the New Jersey Devils and Winnipeg Jets, and throughout his NHL career, he has proven to be a really solid has been a proven goal scorer. He should have no problem landing a good payday on free agency. I could see a team like the LA Kings pursuing Tyler Toffoli and sign him to a 5-year deal at $6.5 million per. Vladimir Tarasenko. Vladimir Tarasenko is a trickier one because I'm sure he would love to stay in Florida, but they don't have enough cap space to do so, which would make him a UFA. The next closest geographic place to Florida would be Carolina, and I feel like the Carolina Hurricanes could really use a player of Tarasenko's stature to propel their core. I predict Tarasenko signs with the Carolina Hurricanes for 3 years at $5 million per. Patrick Kane. Patrick Kane is another tricky one because his projected pay ranges from $3.5 million to all the way to $5.5 or even $6 million per. But I don't expect him to get more than a 1-year deal, as he is 35 turning on 36, and I don't expect him to sign more than a 1-year deal with any team, controlling his destination of where he plays every year. I think Patrick Kane wants to play for the New York Rangers or for another contending team, but it seems like the New York Rangers are his preferred destination if they can make it work salary-wise. Anthony Mantha. For a player like Anthony Mantha, he is better on a bad team and putting up huge numbers, which is why I think he should go to a team such as the Columbus Blue Jackets, who are in need of scoring on the wing, as they are looking to trade Patrik Laine, so they could look for a cheaper replacement. A fair contract for Anthony Mantha would be a 2-year deal at $3.25 million per. Jack Roslovic. Jack Roslovic is a very underrated player, but after his stint in New York, his value in the public eye has been greatly diminished. But that won't prevent professional hockey teams from going after Roslovic, as I think he still has great value to contending teams, such as the Dallas Stars, who have lost a great deal of forward depth. I think Roslovic signs with the Stars for 4 years at $3.25 million per. Tyler Johnson is another player who has been overlooked in the past few years because he's been stuck on a bad Chicago Blackhawks team. But when healthy, he has been able to produce. A team such as the Washington Capitals should jump all over the opportunity to sign a player of the caliber of Tyler Johnson, who has plenty of playoff experience. I predict the Washington Capitals sign Tyler Johnson to a 2-year deal at $2.75 million per. Victor Arvidsson. Victor Arvidsson's tenure with the LA Kings was very rocky, and he often missed large chunks of the season due to injury. Well, one way to regain your value is signing a cheap deal on a contending team and boosting your value in an attempt to get a bigger contract next year. The best way to do that is by signing a cheap contract with the Edmonton Oilers and playing alongside Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl. So I predict Victor Arvidsson signs with the Edmonton Oilers for 1 year at $2.5 million. Daniel Sprong had a pretty solid year with the Detroit Red Wings and provided some pretty solid third line scoring. I would imagine Detroit would consider bringing him back in that similar role. I think Daniel Sprong re-signs for 2 years at $2.5 million per with Detroit. Mike Amadio. Towards the midpoint of last season and in the playoffs, Mike Amadio got more and more ice time to a point where I think he's becoming a very crucial part of the Vegas Golden Knights, which is why I don't think they will let him leave in free agency. Mike Amadio is one of those players who is very versatile. He can play in all situations, can play center and wing, and is overall a really solid player. So I have the Vegas Golden Knights re-signing him to a 3-year deal at $2.25 million per. Kiefer Sherwood had a solid season with the Nashville Predators as their fourth line right winger, and I think they will love to bring him back in that capacity. So I have them re-signing him to a 3-year deal at $1.75 million per. Brandon Duhaime was traded to Colorado at the trade deadline and performed pretty solidly in a fourth line role. I think he gets re-signed by Colorado for a 3-year deal at $1.25 million per. Connor Brown is another player that really came on in the playoffs after a subpar regular season. He, alongside Matthias Janmark and Adam Henrique, formed a really solid third line in the playoffs, and he was part of that historic PK unit in Edmonton. I would imagine that the Oilers try to bring him back. I think ultimately Edmonton brings back Connor Brown for 2 years at $1.1 million per. Other right wingers include Cal Clutterbuck re-signing with the New York Islanders for 2 years, Anthony Duclair signing with the Tampa Bay Lightning, Kevin LeBanc signing with the Colorado Avalanche, Alexander Barabanov also signing with the Colorado Avalanche, Kyler Yamamoto signing with the Ottawa Senators, and Christian Fisher signing with the Florida Panthers. Check out my hockey blog at hockeywithtalkshockey.blogspot.com. Follow me on Facebook and Instagram at hockeywith777. The top free agent defenseman in 2024. Brandon Montour is coming off a Stanley Cup with the Florida Panthers and should be the most sought-after free agent on the market. He has proven he can quarterback a power play, kill penalty kills, and play in all situations. In addition to a Stanley Cup, that makes him a highly valuable defenseman on the market in a very weak defensive class. I predict Brandon Montour signs with the Nashville Predators for 6 years at $7 million per. Brady Shea is one of the many free agents the Carolina Hurricanes have, and so I don't think he will re-sign with Carolina, as Carolina is notorious for not wanting to pay their aging UFAs, even though in the long run, the team that signs Brady Shea could have buyer's remorse. In the short term, he would be an upgrade over what they have. I predict the Toronto Maple Leafs sign Brady Shea to a 5-year deal at $6.5 million per. Brett Pesce. Pesce is another UFA defenseman on the Carolina Hurricanes, and for a while now, he has been linked to the New Jersey Devils, a team who was dreadful defensively last year, and so he could greatly improve their defense, especially on the PK, and he could really help mentor a defenseman such as Luke Hughes. I predict Brett Pesce signs with the New Jersey Devils for 5 years at $6.25 million per. Matt Roy is a solid defensive defenseman who recently played for the Los Angeles Kings. But unfortunately, the LA Kings defense is pretty stacked, especially with the up-and-coming Brandt Clark, so there is just no room for him. Matt Roy is going to have a lot of suitors, but ultimately, I think he will sign with the Carolina Hurricanes for 5 years at $5.2 million per. Shane Gostisbehere, he's never going to be anything more than an offensive defenseman, so if you're looking for a defenseman who can be a solid two-way guy, look away from Shane Gostisbehere. if you're looking for a guy to come in and add offense from the back end and quarterback your power play, this is your guy. I predict Shane Gostisbehere re-signs with the Detroit Red Wings for 3 years at $5.1 mil per. Chris Tanev. Chris Tanev is another highly sought-after free agent, as he is notorious for his strong defensive play, but his play style leads him to being injury-prone, which is why it's a huge risk for a team to sign him to a long-term big money payday. Nonetheless, a team like the Toronto Maple Leafs will be in high pursuit of Chris Tanev, ultimately signing him to a 4-year deal at $5 mil per. Sean Walker. Sean Walker is a very underrated defenseman who had a good season with Philadelphia, and although his numbers with Colorado didn't show it, he also performed well with them too. But because he doesn't get many minutes on Colorado, I think he'll leave in free agency and sign with a different team. A team like the Dallas Stars could use another top 4 guy to play behind Harley and Heiskanen. I predict the Dallas Stars sign Sean Walker to a 3-year deal at $4.7 million per. Nikita Zadorov is going to be a highly sought after free agent, as he's a big body defenseman and is known for his physical play, which is exactly what the Pittsburgh Penguins need, which is why I have the Pittsburgh Penguins signing Zadorov to a 3-year deal at $4.25 mil per. TJ Brody. TJ Brody is a tricky one because while he had a down year last year, he still holds some value. The question is, does he sign a cheap contract on a contending team and try to boost his value to get a better payday next year? Or does he sign a long-term contract with a bad team and try to help mentor young defensemen? I would go with the second choice. I have TJ Brody signing with the Anaheim Ducks for 4 years at $4 mil per. Oliver Ekman-Larsson. OEL was a solid part of the Florida Panthers decor that won the Stanley Cup last year, and I would imagine he would want to stay a part of that championship team. The question is, do the Florida Panthers have enough cap space to retain him, or does he take a pay cut to stay? OEL has played on bad teams before, and he is still getting paid from his buyout in Vancouver, so money isn't an issue. I think he would want to play for a winning culture, which is why I have him re-signing with Florida for 3 years at $3 mil per. Brendan Dillon. Brendan Dillon is the type of defenseman that almost every contending team wants to add because he's a big body defenseman that loves to play physical, tough, and will defend physical in the defensive zone. Brendan Dillon strikes me as the typical Boston Bruin defenseman, which is why I have him signing with the Boston Bruins for 2 years at $2.8 mil per. Justin Schultz. Justin Schultz played pretty well with the Seattle Kraken last year, although it was not anything spectacular. I think he stays in Seattle and maintains his role as a third-line defenseman who plays a little bit on the power play. I have him re-signing in Seattle for 3 years at $2.5 mil per. Dmitry Kulikov. Dmitry Kulikov just won a Stanley Cup with the Florida Panthers, and that severely boosts his value to teams trying to get over the hump in the playoffs. A team like the Carolina Hurricanes is always in need of depth defensemen, and he could be a solid third-pair defenseman on that team. Vincent Desharnais. After a good season with the Edmonton Oilers in the regular season, he was scratched in a large chunk of the Stanley Cup playoffs and into the finals. So that rules out the possibility of him re-signing with Edmonton. Because of his size, Vincent Desharnais should garner plenty of interest, and a team like San Jose could scoop him up and sign him to a 2-year deal at $2.5 mil per. Alexander Carrier. Alexander Carrier has long been one of the more underrated defensemen in the league, as he has spent a few seasons now being paired alongside Roman Josi. But towards the end of last season, Andrew Brunette had Dante Fabro being paired with Roman Josi, and Alexander Carrier was played on the third line, and Alexander Carrier was pushed to the third pair. This means that Carrier most likely will not be returning to Nashville. Expect a team like the Edmonton Oilers to be after Alexander Carrier, who I expect to sign a 2-year deal around $2 million per. Alec Martinez. Alec Martinez is a veteran defenseman who has been around the block, has 2 Stanley Cups under his belt, and is known for his shot blocking prowess. However, there is a large question mark about his health and how durable he is now, as he has spent the past couple of seasons missing a large chunk of games. So I would imagine the next team signing him would only be signing him to a 1-year deal. A team such as the New Jersey Devils is greatly in need of a veteran defenseman that can help mentor and foster their young defensemen. If you pair Alec Martinez alongside a young defenseman like Simon Nemec, that would be a great recipe for success. Jani Hakanpää. Jani Hakanpää has long been a fan favorite, and although he's not the most talented defenseman, nor is he the most flashy defenseman, he gets the job done, as he is a big frame defenseman that's not afraid to be physical and defend his goalie, which is exactly what a team like the Utah Hockey Club needs. So I have Jani Hakanpää signing with Utah for 3 years at $2 million per. Mike Riley is the ideal 6th or 7th defenseman, depending on who's playing better at the moment. Mike Riley, when at the top of his game, is a solid third pair defenseman and could help boost Carolina's pathetic power play. Matt Grzelcyk. Matt Grzelcyk is not likely going to return to the Boston Bruins, as he didn't really play much after returning from injury last season. Matt Grzelcyk can still be a top 4 defenseman if given a chance. The best thing he can do is sign a cheap prove-it deal with a contending team, such as the Dallas Stars. Matt Dumba. Matt Dumba is a player who's really challenging to predict because on one hand, he did have some good stats, but he was playing on an awful Arizona team that didn't have many good defensemen, which severely inflated his stats. And when he was traded to the Tampa team, he didn't have the same numbers. So it's quite hard to evaluate him in free agency. To put himself in better position at the trade deadline, you sign with a team like the Ottawa Senators, and come trade deadline, you could get moved to a contending team again. Kevin Shattenkirk. Kevin Shattenkirk is still a valuable defenseman in the NHL, as not only does he have Stanley Cup experience from his days with the Tampa Bay Lightning, he's a seasoned veteran at running the power play, which has a great value in the NHL. I expect a team such as the Florida Panthers, who are going to be losing key defensemen in the offseason, to go after him. Other key UFA defensemen are Ian Cole, who signs with Pittsburgh, Tyson Barrie, who signs with Minnesota, Ilya Lyubushkin, who will sign with Calgary, Eric Gustafsson, who re-signs with the New York Rangers, Eric Johnson, who signs with Colorado, Joel Edmondson, who signs with Buffalo, Marco Scandella, who signs with St. Louis, Brendan Smith, who signs with Winnipeg, Sebastian Aho, who re-signs with the New York Islanders, Jack Johnson, who signs with the Tampa Bay Lightning, and Tony DeAngelo, who signs with Utah Hockey Club. Here are the top goalie free agents in 2024. Ilya Samsonov. After a solid regular season with the Toronto Maple Leafs and struggling in the postseason, Ilya Samsonov does not appear to be returning to Toronto, so that means he will be a free agent, and the top free agent on the market at that. Ilya Samsonov is the only starting caliber goalie available in free agency this offseason, so I expect a team like the Chicago Blackhawks, who are deprived of starting goaltending, to go hard after him. Samsonov could get signed to a deal for 3 years at $4.25 million per. Laurent Brossoit. Laurent Brossoit did a solid job as the backup to Connor Hellebuyck in Winnipeg. However, playing as the backup to Hellebuyck doesn't give you many opportunities to shine, which is why I have him signing with the Montreal Canadiens, for 2 years at $2.75 million per. Kaapo Kähkönen. Kaapo Kähkönen doesn't seem like he will be returning to New Jersey after they acquired Jacob Markstrom to tandem with Jake Allen, so he will be a free agent. However, during his tenure with the Devils, he did post some solid stats, which makes him a viable option for a team in search of a backup. I can see a team such as the Columbus Blue Jackets to bring him in or in a 3-man rotation alongside Elvis Merzlikins and Daniil Tarasov. I think he will get a 2-year deal at $2.5 million per. Casey DeSmith. Casey DeSmith proved himself to be a solid backup goalie to Thatcher Demko in Vancouver, and when he went down with injury, he did okay in the playoffs as well. With the emergence of Artur Sivils, many expected them to move on from Casey DeSmith. However, there is concern about the durability of Thatcher Demko, thus causing them to work with a 3-man rotation So I think Vancouver brings back Casey DeSmith for 2 years at $2 million per. Scott Wedgwood did a great job as the backup to Jake Ottinger in Dallas. So I see no reason why there should be any change as the backup to Ottinger. So I think he re-signs with Dallas for 3 years at $1.8 million per. Anthony Stolarz. Anthony Stolarz did an excellent job as the backup to Sergei Bobrovsky in Florida and won a Stanley Cup because of it. The Detroit Red Wings are a team who are in search of a backup goalie, and if you tandem Anthony Stolarz alongside Ville Husso and Alex Lyon, that could be a good trio in net. Expect Stolarz to sign somewhere like a 2-year deal worth $1.5 million per. Cam Talbot. While Cam Talbot is getting up there in age, he did have a really good year last year and was even an all-star, so he should draw some interest on the free agency market, especially because the free agency market for goalies is not very strong this year. Ultimately, I have Cam Talbot signing with the Washington Capitals for 2 years at $1.5 million per to back up Charlie Lindgren. Kevin Lankinen. While Kevin Lankinen did do a good job as the backup to UC Staros in Nashville, it seems like they want to move on from him and go in a different direction. So I have Lankinen signing in Winnipeg to back up last year's Vezina Trophy winner Connor Hellebuyck. Other free agency goalies signed were Chris Drager by Calgary, James Reimer by Nashville, Martin Jones by Toronto, Antti Ranta by Colorado, and Calvin Pickard by Edmonton. Listen to Hockey West Talks podcast on Podbean and Spotify. Check out my travel channel at youtube.com/HockeyWizTravels. Here are some notable RFAs this season. The Anaheim Ducks have Isaac Lundestrom and Arho Vakanainen, who I predict will both be re-signed for 2-year deals. The Boston Bruins have Jeremy Swayman, who I predict will be re-signed to an 8-year deal at $7 million per. The Buffalo Sabres have Henry Jokiharju and Peyton Krebs, who should both be re-signed to 2-year deals. The Carolina Hurricanes have Seth Jarvis, who should get re-signed to a 5-year deal worth $6 million per, and Martin Necas, who should be traded. The Columbus Blue Jackets have 3 major RFAs to re-sign. Kirill Marchenko, who should get re-signed to a 4-year deal at $4.5 million per season. Cole Sillinger, who should get re-signed to a 3-year deal at $3.4 million per, and Alexander Texier, who should get re-signed to a 1-year deal at $3 million. The Dallas Stars have to re-sign Thomas Harley, who I suggest should get locked up long-term for 8 years at $6.75 million per. Detroit Red Wings have to retain Moritz Seider and Lucas Raymond long-term. For Seider, it should be 8 years at $7.5 million per, and for Raymond, it should be 8 years at $7 million per. The Edmonton Oilers have to retain Philip Broberg and Dylan Holloway. I can see Broberg being re-signed for 1 year at $1.5 million, and Dylan Holloway being re-signed for 2 years at $1.2 million per. The Florida Panthers have to re-sign Anton Lundell. I see them re-signing him to a 4-year deal worth $4.25 million per. The LA Kings have to re-sign Quinton Byfield. I see them re-signing him to an 8-year deal at $6.25 million per. The Montreal Canadiens have to re-sign Arbor Zyka. I see them re-signing him to a 2-year deal at $1.7 million per. The New Jersey Devils have to re-sign Dawson Mercer. I see them re-signing him to a 3-year deal at $4 million per. The New York Rangers have to re-sign Ryan Lindgren and Braden Schneider. I see Lindgren being re-signed to a 1-year deal at $5 million, and Braden Schneider being re-signed for 3 years at $3.5 million per. I see Shane Pinto of the Ottawa Senators being re-signed for 3 years at $2 million per. Matthew Beniers and Eli Tolvanen are RFAs for the Seattle Kraken. For Beniers, I see him getting re-signed for 8 years at $5.75 million per, and Tolvanen getting re-signed for 4 years at $4.25 million per. For Toronto, both Timothy Liljegren and Nicholas Robertson are RFAs. Liljegren should get re-signed for 1 year at $2.1 million, and Robertson should get re-signed for 2 years at $1.75 million per. Utah Hockey Club has 3 major RFAs to re-sign: Sean Durzi, JJ Moser, and Barrett Hayton. Both Sean Durzi and JJ Moser are re-signed for 3 years at $4.5 million per, while Barrett Hayton is re-signed for 2 years at $3.5 million per. The Washington Capitals have to re-sign Connor McMichael, who I think should get re-signed to a 2-year deal at $2 million per. The Winnipeg Jets have to re-sign Cole Perfetti. He should get re-signed for 2 years at $1.5 million per. In my next podcast, I'll be talking about the free agent signings.